One of the most fascinating topics in the world is the whole subject of the Israeli and Palestinian conflict. And if you've never been to Israel, perhaps you would have a very difficult time understanding it. Those of us who've been there get a little bit better understanding. But I'm really honored to have with us today Dale Hanson Bourke. She's the author of the Israeli-Palestinian Conflict. She's also president of PDI, which is a marketing and communication strategy firm. And Dale, nice to have you with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Well, fascinating topic and book to say the least. And can you, in a sentence or two, what is the conflict? I mean, I didn't understand it until I got on the ground there one day and I thought, there is no way these two groups are ever going to get along.
First I should say this is the simplest book anyone will ever read on this topic. I hope we can start there, because I really was very confused as well, and I wanted to break it down to the very, very basic. And to a great degree, it's a land dispute. People who both lay claim to the same land. So that is part of it, but of course that's not all of it. It goes on from there. So that's the beginning. Both groups of people feel that the land is their land.
All right. Let's talk about what is considered the promised land.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the issue that I ran into very quickly was all the words you use, or the words that are used by different groups of people, have different meanings. So as Christians, you may use promised land because you're looking at a biblical concept of the promised land. And that's, certainly from the Old Testament. We've read that time and time again. But different people, again, have different interpretations of what that means. It's the land that was promised to Abraham, and certainly in the Old Testament, but has continued to be in Jewish history believed to be the land of the Israelites, or the Jews.
All right. So the barriers that we're talking about today they're certainly not the same barriers that are described in the scriptures.
You mean
the borders, I should say, the borders, the actual...
The borders. Well, the borders have changed certainly over the years very much. And, depending on what point in time you look at that area of land, right, you'll see different borders. So, yeah, no, those are... It depends on what map you have in the back of your Bible, I'd say.
All right. There's been enormous discussion about a two-state solution. Is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, I believe it's possible, but part of the reason that I believe so is, I come to this as a Christian, as a believer, that miracles happen, and I think it would probably take something close to a miracle to have that happen at this point. But a two-state solution where the two groups of people would be able to live in peace with security for both sides, I think eventually that is a possibility. I think right now it seems a little bleak, but really there's no other solution in some ways. The Israelis don't want to have a majority population that is not Jewish. They really want a Jewish state. And so to remain democratic and Jewish, Israel really needs to find a way to make that happen, in some ways more than the Palestinians.
So why are they always at war? Why are the Arabs and the Jews always at war?
They haven't always been at war. In fact, they actually used to live fairly peacefully during history together. And, and ironically, during the Crusades, the Christians were pitted against the Muslims and Jews together. So the Muslims and Jews were on one side primarily, and the Christian Crusaders were on the other. Historically, that hasn't been a real issue. It's been something that they've actually been able to live peacefully together. It's really been in the last 100 years when there were large groups of Jews that came in, especially from Eastern Europe, into the land that was, at that point, British Mandate Palestine, and displaced people who were there, or, there was some disputes over who owned the land and that type of thing. So that's when a lot of the, the difficulty began.
So if they both want to coexist and they have history of coexisting, what's stopping this peace process?
Well, I don't think I wish I could tell you exactly, but there are many, many different issues. Certainly, from the Israeli point of view, they want to feel secure. They want to be sure that there's a sense that the security is in place They withdrew from Gaza, and they still have rockets coming into Israel from Gaza. And so the average Israeli will tell you, look what happened. We left Gaza, we gave them what they wanted, and we still have rockets coming into Israel. So we want security. The Palestinians would say, well, you haven't really withdrawn from Gaza, and we still want the West Bank, and we want to have our own governance. Certainly the military continues to govern in the West Bank. So that's those are the main issues. But there's issues of water, there's issues of, where the borders are, there are the issues of the settlements that are well into the West Bank but are Israeli, occupied by Israelis. So, yeah, there are a lot of issues.
Because at one time they were offered the West Bank and they turned it down.
I know. I mean, it's the problem with this kind of thing, and probably all, disputes in history, is if you go back to a certain point in time, everybody says, well, wait a minute, could we go back there and take that offer? But that one's passed, and there were reasons why, apparently, that they didn't accept that offer. And, leadership hasn't always been great. The Palestinians have suffered from sometimes very poor leadership, and sometimes from not really having their best interests in mind by the other Arab states. So that's been another issue.
Our government has given money to both sides.
Yeah.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
That's an interesting question. When I first started getting into this, and again, I approached this as an average person just trying to make sense of it. When I first got into it, the thing I had heard was, oh, we give Israel so much money. Why do we give so much money to Israel? And frankly, I didn't even know we were giving Palestinians money, but we are. We give money to the Palestinians primarily to help with their schooling and with their infrastructure. And with Israel, we do give a lot of money to Israel, but it actually goes primarily through U.S. contractors. So as much as we talk about giving money to Israel, it's not like we send aid to Israel. We actually spend a lot of it here in the U.S. through U.S. Contractors who then supply goods and services to Israel.
As you know, the Palestinians sought recognition at the UN. Mm-hmm. And why would that be important to them?
Well, for them, it's two things. One, and again, sometimes this is political. We have President Abbas, who's trying to solidify his position with the Palestinians. So for him to stand up and ask for this recognition on behalf of all Palestinians kind of gives him, I guess it would be recognition that he represents all Palestinians. And the fact is that Hamas is not so sure he represents them, but this gave him the opportunity to do that. But in addition to that, he has said himself that he wants to be able to take Israel to the International Criminal Court. And by having standing with the UN, this gives them the opportunity to do that. So that's
for
part
what?
Of
what do they want to take him to the International Court for?
Well, they believe that they have that they can take them to court for issues of continuing the occupation, and for other issues that they would, say they feel are valid before the UN. That's we can go down that road, but I think frankly a lot of it had to do with the politics of President Abbas really wanting to be sure that people saw him as a leader of the Palestinians, and I think he's had, he's been viewed as a bit weak by many of the Palestinians, and certainly has a hard time with Hamas getting behind him. I mean, he does not speak for Hamas, and Hamas just generally does not support what he does. So,
is the conflict really real estate, or is it philosophical, religious, ideological?
I think it's a little bit of all of that. I mean, I think land is certainly the essential part of that. Religion. Religion plays a role at sometimes, but not nearly as much as sometimes people will say. The majority of Israelis, as you probably know, are secular. They're not. It's not that they are so tied to their faith. In fact, they are very bothered by the fact that they have a large population of ultra-Orthodox who they consider to be really extreme in their faith. And the Palestinians are, for the most part, pretty moderate Muslims and Christians. So I don't think it's so much about religion. But I do think that the land is something that they have been fighting over for a long time, and it has come to represent far more. Now, the city of Jerusalem probably is more than land. Jerusalem obviously has religious implications for three people. So, I mean, three religions, three groups of people. So that is a whole other issue.
Do you think Jerusalem ought to be Palestinian or Israeli?
You know, again, I'm a person trying to make sense of this, not the person who has the expertise. Yeah. But I would say that I think from what I have seen, to have it as an independently controlled area, so maybe under the UN or under a third party, makes the most sense. And as you know, the Muslim holy sites right now are actually controlled by Jordan. Wow. So, you know, I think that there has to be some compromise there.
All right, I got a scoop, but thank you. It's called the Israeli-Palestinian Conflict, and Dale Hanson Bourke, you want to check it out. It's put out by IVP Books, and check it out at Barnes & Noble or Amazon.com. Dale, thanks for being with us today.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it.